Have you ever had that feeling where you're walking down the street and you're like, oh, I should go into here? And then you do, and then you see someone you haven't seen in a long time or whatever it may be. That is, welcome back to one's journey of unwinding the mind and, of course, your daily microdose. Now, tune in to the latest episode of One's Journey. Today, I want to talk about spirit working through people and how the Holy Spirit cannot impact the illusion, per se. It can't come in and turn the sea red when it's blue, right? But it can work through people. It can work through parts of the illusion in order to impact the illusion. And I want to provide you some examples. So when we begin to listen to spirit, we often have spirit communicate through others back to us. I have found for myself that reminds us that we are on the right track. And one of them is abundance. And really being able to see, holy crap, Ashley, you don't understand how abundant you actually are until you fully surrender to spirit and listen, as crazy as it sounds. I have already released a video about me intentionally making the decision to leave my personal Facebook and Instagram once and for all. And in that video, I shared that I would share in this video what has happened since. I made that decision, and it was such a beautiful decision, like I'd share, but the ego immediately came back in, and I have, a business to run and a message to share and blah, blah, blah. And I had this event coming up in February where I needed to market it, but realistically, no one was seeing it on social media anyway. But to me, having those 2,500 followers, even if only 100 saw them, was a huge impact, and I needed it in order to survive. Well, I knew that I felt this way for a reason, and I was just going to hold on. Like, as much as the ego wanted to talk me back out of it, I had great supports around me, and I was like, nope, we're riding this ride. So I make that decision, and that night I get on a recording with a podcast. And it was a beautiful podcast recording. And afterwards, the gentleman asked me if I had anything coming up that I would like to advertise. And I was like, well, actually, I have this Edge experience in February in St. Pete and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, why don't you send me a 55-second to a minute and 10-second commercial, and I'll clip it into 2 of my videos a week for a few months and share it with my audience. And now he has 25,000 active listeners. A lot bigger than my 2,500 unactive Instagram listeners, right? And my response to him was, wow, thank you, out of the kindness of your heart. And I really felt that I was in spirit in this entire interview, and this was after the interview, and this was just an extension of still coming from a place of spirit. And he said, no one does anything just out of the kindness of our heart. And he said, I told you that my team and my wife and I did a lot of research on you to make sure you are fit for our listeners. And what I realized is you're some sort of kindred spirit that has a message that needs to get out there, and I'm here to help you. And tears just started. And that was like his key to exit, right? And it was just like, oh my gosh. This is what listening to spirit looks like. And I've done it many times through my life. But this was a drastic reminder to myself. And as well, this gentleman has built an amazing podcast without a huge shiny object of a following. So it was also a representation of that. And it was like spirit being like, yes, Ashley, I have you held. And look at the abundance I hold when you just trust. And it wasn't like the Holy Spirit came down and was like, do this, do that. It was spoke through someone else to me as a reminder of how abundant we truly are when we just surrender. And if we think of it in the illusions aspect, like I was worried about the 2,500 followers I had when only a couple hundred were seeing my stuff. And I was provided with 25,000 active listeners to get my name in front of. How beautiful. But that's not even where it ends, you guys. So I had reached out to David Hoffmeister, which hopefully by this time we have some sort of interview or something with him. He has quite a following, and he's been sharing the message of A Course in Miracles for around 35 years, I believe. And I was like, oh, wow, it'd be really cool to collaborate with him or just even talk to him. And I just think it would be amazing to see a direct representation of the possibilities of where I can be one day. So I reached out to him, and this is the same time that I decided to go off social media. and said, hey, David, I'm leaving my social media page, but I would really, really like to connect with you or collaborate on a right-minded conversation. And he said yes. And we are hopping on a call this coming week, so to be determined what that looks like. But that opened up as well. So as I said in the last video, it was like the second I just surrendered to spirit and decided to leave what I thought the real world was, the whole real world opened, right? The real world, which is outside of the illusion, and it's coming from that place of the Holy Spirit. Again, everything's happened at once. That's another big piece to this. So though it felt as though I made that decision and then he came along, all of that happened at once. And yeah, it's kind of like, and we can go deeper into that later. But what that means is the Holy Spirit is constantly working through people, but it all happened at once. So one day I was driving along and there was this billboard, I think that said Jesus saves, and I had this huge realization about some things. And I remember thinking, was that billboard put up for me? Because it was a hand-painted small billboard on the side of a street, and it looked like it maybe had been there 20 years. And I had this just knowingness and understanding that it was there for me to see that day. But it was put up that day because it all happened in the same day. I'm not sure if you're 100% getting that, but another example. So recently someone shared that they had come across the course in a book exchange place at a friend's apartment building for their birthday pool party, and they picked it up and they hadn't opened it yet. And this person has been listening to my videos, and I talk about the course a lot. But that I don't believe they had completely correlated it to what I'm talking about until just recently. And to me, that is a direct example of a person who at one point purchased the course, placed it in that box where she would be. She felt drawn to it. She grabbed it. And then when she was ready, she realized that's the book I'm always talking about, is the Course in Miracles. Again, it wasn't like the Holy Spirit dropped a book in front of her, right? A magical book, or, a genie in a bottle was like, poof, here's the Course in Miracles book. It was through the actions of others that the Spirit worked in order for that book to come where she needed it to be. Have you ever had that feeling where you're walking down the street and you're like, oh, I should go into here? And then you do, and then you see somebody you haven't seen in a long time, or whatever it may be. That is Spirit working through you. When you become that clear vessel for Spirit to work through you is when you are actually working as one, right? This one well-oiled machine where this piece helps, this piece helps, this piece helps, this piece. It makes me think of like our body. Our body is made up of all of these cells, and these little cell workers work together, and they go do this and they go do that. But I think if we stop listening to the Spirit, and then some little cells decide to listen to the ego guy, and some other little cells listen to this ego guy, then we stop our connection together because we can't hear that connection. But when we all tap back into that connection, again, remember, the Holy Spirit doesn't just work for you, like you as this body, but for the entire sonship, because we are one. So when we talk about selfish at the level of the illusion, it's like, I must take from you in order for me to have what I need. But when we talk about capital selfish, and that Cassidy, she shares that, capital S selfish is the Holy Spirit's version of selfish. And what that is selfish for the entire sonship, because the Holy Spirit knows we're all one. So it may not appear in the illusion that what happened was best for you, but it was best for the sonship, because that is who the Holy Spirit is looking out for. The completion of the sonship to return home and remember, not just you to drive a Bentley and marry the man of your dreams and blah, 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 right? Get it? Man of your dreams. I love that as well. Again, Spirit works through us when we connect to Spirit, and Spirit speaks to us through others when we are open to receiving. And sometimes in that moment, you may not be open to receiving, but you will hold on to it until you are ready, and then it will just like come in as a download. You may not be fully aware, but subconsciously that will happen. So just know that, how powerful that is. Like, it can completely change the entire trajectory of this illusion. It can completely shift the gem enough of the hologram to change the masses if we all just tapped into the spirit. We tapped into our oneness and remembered. Oh, this was a great video. I would love to hear how spirit has talked through others or communicated to you through others, actions, words, whatever it may be, and how you have as well. Share, share, share. Tons of love. And as always, until next time, remember you are worth it, friend. Bye-bye.